Hello, Facebook world. Hello, podcast listeners. It's Heather here and
Deb.
hello. So we are going to be talking today about what is a heart wall. But before we do that, I just want to just remind you that Reluctantly Woo Woo is all about our experiences as being that, like reluctantly woo woo. And woo woo is the way that we define it are the things that feel unbelievable and defy the logical mind, but somehow work. We know that there's more people out there like us who are tired of the conventional route and want to try something different, but are reluctant to because like energy work, essential oils, like alternative things are different. And they're not things that were taught growing up. So we're skeptical and we're also believers. So skeptical believers, skeptically woo woo, and that's what this is all about: sharing the tools that we have found, even though we're skeptical about them. So today I'm going to talk about the heart wall. So Deb, you want to jump in and share first, because we have to understand what really the heart is and the role of the heart before we can talk about a heart wall.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of us know of the heart as just this organ that pumps blood through our systems, but there's a lot more to it. And especially in this space that we like to live in, we were chatting a little offline beforehand. I was trying to say, like, what do I think, what do I actually think the heart is? But, there's a difference between our logical thinking brain. And then if you think about any difficult decision you've ever had to make in your life, there's a feeling in your chest, like your heart has a little brain of its own, and it's kind of like the knowing of your soul, and it's where your creative essence emanates from. And then in relation to the energy work, and as we'll dive deeper into the heart wall, there literally is a electrical field that your heart gives off. So there's an instrument, I'm not obviously very well versed in it, but the magnetocardiogram that can scientifically measure that this is a fact. So for the reluctant and the skeptical, this is a real thing. And it's about 8 to 12 feet of energy that just, emanates from your body. And I think we've all had the experience of being in the presence of someone that either has great warm energy and you kind of want to draw nearer to them and be around them, and vice versa, someone who really kind of has that, oh gosh, they walk in the room and you can just feel the room changes. That's their energy field, and that's often emanating from their heart. So yeah, I think you have some other things to add to that, Heather.
Yeah, well, and I love that example because when people are like, oh, I don't know about this energy stuff, and I say, when somebody walks in, like, have you ever walked into a room and you were automatically like, oh, I got to get out of here, or you just saw somebody and you're like, does not feel good to me, right? Or vice versa, you see somebody and like you automatically feel connected or drawn to them and you don't know why, right? That's the energy. Those are those things that we just can't explain, right? But they're just there. So quantum physics proves that everything is made up of energy, and energy is atomic matter, and that's just form. We talked about this on our last episode. And because emotions are at the end of the day energy in motion, right? They can form these solids around our heart that put up this wall of protection. And when we have this, we walk around with this heart wall, we end up seeing the world in a certain way. And there's a saying that you don't see things as they are, you see things as you are. And if you're living in emotions such as hopelessness, dread, fear, unsupported, you're constantly going to be receiving experiences where you feel unsupported, that are hopeless, that are dreadful, that are fearful. And I wanted to share a funny story about this, about how like we see things the way that we are. And it's silly, but back in March, I was out in Arizona visiting a friend, and we'd had a conversation like when she was picking me up from the airport, we'd had this whole conversation about sex toys and like, do you like to use them? Not. And she had said that, she and her boyfriend enjoyed using them. So I was taking a shower one day in her shower, in the master bedroom. I was by myself. And how like we have shower caddies, with shampoo and all that stuff. Well, as I was looking at the shower caddy, I saw this thing hanging down, and I thought it was a really big sex toy. Not really big, a regular size sex toy, right? I just thought it was, and I was like, okay. I mean, she just left it out for me to see. Like she said she did, she likes them. And so
Yeah.
I just was like, all right. And she just has her sex toy hanging out in the shower and she uses it in the shower. Great. Right. And so that was shower number one. Shower number two, saw it there, didn't say anything, blah, blah, blah. Shower number three, I got in the shower, and this time for some reason, I looked at the shower caddy coming from the side angle, and I realized that what was hanging there actually was a squeegee to clean the walls off, and it wasn't a sex toy at all. It's just that my perception, because I had sex toy in my head, and I saw something hanging there that was similar to a shape, right? Like the handle was similar to a shape.
It was phallic. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Okay.
we'll always get what we're looking for, always.
Right.
And then sometimes you realize, oh wait, my perception was totally off, but the perception had nothing to do with that other thing. It had everything to do with the lens that we were looking through. Right. And so when we have a heart wall, excuse me, we are constantly looking for ways to experience these emotions that make up our heart wall. And the wall is not made up of positive, loving, great emotions. It's made up of emotions that are people would label negative. And I don't like to use the term negative because emotions are just emotions, right? It's energy and motion. That's all it is. But they're emotions that most of us avoid feeling or do our best to avoid feeling.
The less pleasant ones.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So when we have an experience where we're repeatedly hurt or attacked, our subconscious forms this wall to protect around our heart, to protect us, right, from more heartache, which is completely logical and completely rational. Right? We need that protection. And it serves us well when we're in that specific situation. And then when we're no longer in that situation, right, and then we walk around with this wall around our heart, it's almost like, well, not almost like, it is like somebody coming back from war and still walking around in like their full combat gear, and they're like, I don't understand why people are afraid of me when I walk down the street, or I don't understand why everybody's looking at me this way. Right? That's what a heart wall does. It keeps us completely blocked off from the world. Okay? And it's each layer of the heart wall is made up of a trapped emotion. So I'm sure we probably talked about this, Deb, but the movie Inside Out, the Disney movie, the Pixar movie.
I never watched it from beginning to end. I don't know how. I actually have a kid and haven't seen that entire movie. She watched it without me at some point, and it wasn't one that she wanted to watch on repeat endlessly. So I didn't. I've seen parts of it. That's the one where the little beings live inside they're like, one's purple and one's right.
Yeah. So it's about this little girl's basically subconscious, and it's an 11-year-old girl. I think she's 11, and her control panel, like, of her mind is like anger, joy, sadness, frustration. I forget what the other one was. Disgust, I think it was. And with all the experiences that they were going through, each time they would have something go on, one of them try to speak up. And every time she had an experience, a ball would drop down into her mind, and then they would decide where to put it into the subconscious. And I love that visual, because every time we do have an experience, right, we feel an emotion. And if we don't allow that emotion to pass through us, then it gets stuck inside of us, and that can build up and build up and build up, right? So I always give the metaphor of imagining that you're a castle, and that castle has a drawbridge, like, to go over the moat that is around it, and that drawbridge allows things to go in and out. And some people, they have their drawbridge raised up all the time. And those are the people who are like, I don't understand why I can't be successful. I don't understand why I feel so closed off from myself, why I just feel numb emotionally. Then there's people whose drawbridge is down all the time, and they're like, I don't understand why people are always taking advantage of me. I don't understand why, people don't respect me, right? Both of those scenarios are not good. Right? We want to have the ability to raise and lower that drawbridge for when it's appropriate, because there are times, right, that you want to, like, you see danger coming and you're like, nope, Like, I got to put up a boundary. Right? And there's other times you want to lower it down because you know that it's something beneficial. And so our heart wall, I like to think of it as like when we release our heart wall, we have the ability to raise or lower that drawbridge when appropriate. Right? I had a story of a woman who she had just gotten out of her second physically abusive marriage, and we worked on her heart wall. And as you know, when I work with people, I'll wait. I have a before and after assessment, and a couple of weeks after we released her heart wall, I like people to like let them sit in the release of it and just experience life without it for a little bit. And we were doing the after assessment, and she's like, I don't know, Heather. She's like, I think I built up a whole bunch more heart walls. And I was like, well, tell me more. And she's like, well, this guy that I'm dating, he wanted to do this. And I was like, nope, sorry, that's not happening. And somebody at work was like, I wanted to do something. I was like, no, that's not acceptable to me. And I was like, do you think you build up more heart walls, or do you think you put up boundaries for yourself? She was like, oh, that's what this is. It's like,
That's an interesting
yes,
one. I think we can do a whole nother episode probably on boundaries. But that's really interesting that she didn't actually know what that felt like.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. But because she no longer had the heart wall, right, she had a level of care and respect for herself that she
Hmm.
didn't before.
Yeah.
Right? And she
Yeah.
wouldn't tolerate crappy behavior.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So that's one of the things of like, how can you tell if you have a heart wall? Right. Um, there also, if you just feel like I'm not good enough, which is, you know, what most people feel majority of the time, right?
Yeah.
They feel lacking in confidence, emotionally numb, hopeless. You just kind of feel like you're just there, and like you're not
Right.
excited about anything, not sad, just like there.
Yeah.
What are some other signs or things that you've seen from people with that have heart walls?
I mean, I think the obvious ones are people being closed off to even just letting people get close to them, right? Like never really having deep conversations with people or allowing anyone to see them as, a human being, really. Like people that are trying to always look perfect. I would think that's a heart wall thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not willing to be vulnerable. And I think also when you're held back in life, like just generally, like you feel like you can never win, like um I have a couple of friends who always seem to have bad luck, like they assume their luck is always bad,
Right.
which again, there's a lot of subconscious stuff that goes into that, but I would say some of that is also walls, right? Heart walls. And yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Unhealthy
Yep.
behaviors, self-sabotage with your personal being, your physical being.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. And one of the things that I hear from people so much is that when they come to me, they're like, I've done coaching, I've done therapy, I'm in the same place. I know there's something deeper. I just can't seem to get to it.
Yeah.
Right. And right.
I
And the
think
heart
I
wall.
can think of folks, sorry, I just talked over you, but
Yeah. That's it.
that are very, very smart people who know the right things to do. But yet, I mean, it goes back to the self-sabotage. But yeah, I can think of, I don't want to call out people that I know, but like someone who would be very, very smart and knows how to eat well, how to exercise, what all of those things mean for a healthy body, yet doesn't ever stick with it, can do it in short sprints, and then
Hmm.
eventually falls back off. So I've really tried to encourage, like, let's dig deeper on that because there's something causing you to feel like you don't deserve to treat yourself well, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we have this heart wall, there can be anywhere from 20 emotions that are making it to 200 emotions, right? And every practitioner is different in the way that they like measure the heart wall. And what I mean by that is like when somebody's working on you, they determine like, does this person have a heart wall? And we do that through muscle testing. So like when Deb and I were working together, and she's in Arizona and I'm in North Carolina, she gave me permission to connect to her energy field, and I would just through muscle testing. So I'd take the way that I do it, and there's different ways to do energy, to do muscle testing, but the way that I do it is take these two, my pointer finger and thumb, and I would link them together like a Christmas tree. Like, what are those links that you make for
Garland,
Christmas
like
trees?
garland,
Yeah, yeah. Is it
something
garland?
like that.
It's like with the construction paper.
Yeah.
I link them together, and um, And I asked, like, if I say my name is Heather and I try to pull it apart, it like I can't because it's solid because my subconscious knows that it's true, so it's strong, But if I say my name is Deb, it's very easy to pull apart, right? And for anybody who's watching or listening, is like, okay, but you can totally manipulate that. I totally get it. I've absolutely believed, like, thought that as well. Um, and I had years ago, I have a bunch of different stories, but I had years ago, I was with my nephew, who at the time was 7, and just like any kid, loves sugar. And we were waiting for his dad to come out of the grocery store, and he's like, Auntie Heather, tell me a story. And I was like, well, do you want me to teach you muscle testing? And he's like, okay. So you can also muscle test, like, through, like, sometimes people have you hold out their arm, and then another person would, like, try to push down on their arm, and if the arm, if it's a yes, right, then the arm will be solid. And if not, it's easy, like, your muscle goes weak. Just the same way as when you walk into a room and you feel like, oh, I gotta leave, right? Your body just gives you that message without you telling. But my nephew, so I was like, let's do muscle testing. And so I had him hold out his arm, and I said, just say out loud, sugar is good for me. And he's like, sugar is good for me. And his arm was like, he's like, no, do it again, Auntie Heather, do it again. And we kept doing it. He's like, no, this is not right. So even like little kids, like, they get it, and their body will respond in that way. So when we're checking for HeartWall, and the way that I do it, you can share the way you did it after Deb, is I will just literally, like, if Deb let me connect to her energy. So right now, Deb, can I connect to your energy?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now my name is Deb, I'm getting a solid. My name is Heather, right? Because I'm connected to her energy. So if I say, does Deb have a heart wall? Hey, I'm getting a no, because we've worked on it, right? And you can, right? Yeah. And you can rebuild a heart wall. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But when I'm checking for somebody and I get a yes, we'll ask how big it is. And I ask in feet just because that's how my mind thinks, but different practitioners will ask in miles or, whatever. Yeah, I've heard all different. So we'll determine the size of it, right? How big it is. And then we determine what it's made out of. And that's more just kind of for grins and giggles.
It's
right?
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and the when we ask what it's made of, it's just symbolic of, like, we use something that we like and have an affinity towards to protect us. I've seen lots of crazy things. What in the couple that you've done so far, what have you seen that heart walls are made out of?
I mean, I had a concrete, which that one wasn't surprising. Wax, 14 something feet of wax. That was an interesting one. It took me forever to figure out, because why would we think wax, right?
Right.
And seeds. Seeds was an interesting one. Mine was tears, saltwater tears when you did mine. And I have one I'm working on right now that's obsidian, which that is interesting. Yeah. Which again took me a while, because I mean, you can probably speak to this too. I don't know your system of doing it, but I assume it's similar. To try to figure out the material. It is kind of a guessing game at first, but just start with, is it harder or softer than wood? Is it man-made? Is it synthetic? Just kind of working through some of those, process of elimination. I got down to stone, and then, like, you can only think of so many. And then I'm like Googling what kind of stone would this be? And then just really trying to, what is it, a gemstone, or is it, until I got to finally, like, I see lists, and then I'm like, working down the list, and I get to obsidian, and it's so strong. And I'm like, wow, that's okay. Must be it. Because everything else was like a very, very, obvious no. So
yeah. So I had one time, I think my favorite story is I had a woman who she's like, I don't know what it's made out of. So the same thing, like, we'll start off, is it harder than wood? Is it softer than wood? And what it got narrowed down to was that it was made out of leaves. And she was like, I don't know what that means. And I was like, I don't either. Just work here, as Dr. Nelson, who created the body code, says. He's like, I just work here. And so she texted a couple days later, and she's like, Heather, I figured out what the leaves were. I said, what? And she said, I was really struggling with smoking pot before we started doing this. She's like, that the leaves were marijuana leaves. And I was like, oh, that's fascinating. She's like, I'm not struggling with it anymore. she's like, I'm still doing it, but I'm not struggling. Like, I don't have that struggle, like feeling like I'm a terrible person for doing this.
Right. Right.
So it's so fascinating, like what it's, I had somebody else who, she's like, I think it's made out of, diamonds. And I muscle tested and I was like, I'm getting a no. And I asked her, I was like, well, what are diamonds made out of? Coal. And I got a really strong yes on that. And she was like, okay. I mean, if it's a wall, I guess so. It made sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably better that it was coal and not diamonds. Easier to scrape away at.
Right.
Kind of how I think of it. Because the seeds one was very interesting because I want to say that started at 5 something feet. And what was interesting about that one is the first session cleared like most of it. Like it went from like 5 feet to like 8 inches or something. And then it was like an inch, an inch, an inch. Like it got denser. The closer I got to clearing it, the smaller the increments of clearing it were. And it just made me, I had this visual of like, if you picture a pile of seeds, if it's 5 feet tall of seeds, the top layer is going to be easier to get at. The bottom layer is going to be more compact. So,
yes. Yeah. And to get it one little seed at a time is like,
yeah.
So when we determine the size, and then just as Deb alluded to, like it is released in layers. And so we typically can't release the whole heart wall in one session. Now, I know that there are practitioners out there that say that they can. I personally don't subscribe to that.
Yeah.
And the reason is I've done plant medicine, things like ayahuasca and stuff. And that is like getting hit over the head with a hammer in many ways, right? And it is really like you have to be a really like strong person and willing to do the work, right? To dive really that deep.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's that serving to people when we like to go in and say, I'm going to be able to move all of this out at once. I don't think that's how our subconscious works. So that's my personal viewpoint on that.
Yeah. And I certainly don't have the same level of experience you do, but my intuition for all of this would say that would be like a big raw open wound. Like it's too much at once. Because I do know in the experience that I've had so far, like it does tend to kind of stir things up for people as you're working those emotions out, whether or not they even do anything on their own. They sometimes notice stuff. And if you just like, I mean, like if you think about your heart having a wall around it, and instead of gradually lessening that load, you're just like I feel like that would just be a little bit much for people.
Right? Yeah.
That's what my gut says about it. But
yeah. And that's how I feel the same way too. I think that it is like, I compare it to going in and getting braces versus just knocking all your teeth out and giving you, a crown or dentures or implants or something. Like, let's just go in a little bit at a time, right?
Or even how braces or Invisalign, like they give you, if you think about the Invisalign version, they give you like a gradual moving. They don't just give you like, put this retainer in, that's where we want your teeth to be.
Right.
Because that would be horrible.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, not fun at all. Yeah. So so definitely a little bit of time, and I'd rather slow and steady because, because it is an identity shift. You're releasing all this stuff that keeps you in a place of thinking that you're not good enough, not loving. And so to go into that, then wake up the next day, in a couple, like if you were to go to sleep and we're doing this, which you're not, but like all of a sudden just be like, I am good enough. Like, there's so much work that needs to be done, and gradual, like little baby steps to align you with that identity, I feel like is a much better way to go.
I agree.
So, yeah. So when we experience trauma over and over and over again, which everybody has, I mean, even if somebody was like, I never experienced trauma in my life, as soon as you enter 2020, like it's just trauma, right? This year has been trauma. Like so many things have been taken away without our choice. And so when we experience that trauma over and over again, right, we want to protect ourselves, except when it doesn't serve us anymore. And so when feel like we're missing out on things like love and connection and joy and success and self-confidence, high levels of energy, if you've been in the coaching world forever or, gone to therapy forever and you're like, I don't understand, like nothing is changing, probably because you have a heart wall. Right? And they say, they being Dr. Nelson, who started the body code, he said that it is like 93% of the people have a heart wall. And every person that I work with has one. And even like I've worked with somebody, I have a client now who she's been in this world of personal development for a long time. She had a really, really tiny one. Like most people I work with have like, over 10 feet, size heart walls, but she just had just a little bit, right? It just needed a little bit of love. But most people, if they haven't had this kind of work, typically do. So
Yeah.
the benefits, right, of clearing it, like people say that they feel lighter. They say that, they don't feel like they have this heaviness in their chest anymore, which that was a big one for me. What made me a believer in this work was I didn't feel like the weight of the world was on my chest anymore. People say that they're more open to relationships. I've had people who got back together with exes, or like found the love of their life afterwards, or got in a relationship and broke up, but the way that they handled the breakup was so completely different than they ever did before, right? Which you talked about, on our last episode, right? People tend to say that they're less emotional. They feel their emotions more, but they know how to process them better. So that they're not like on this high and low kind of thing. I have this cool story. I had this guy that I was working with that he'd been going to this massage therapist for years, and he said that she's like super intuitive and like senses things, and he had not told her about the work that we had done. And she said to him when she saw him, she was like, "This is the most relaxed and untense that I have ever seen you." And she didn't know that he had this work.
Right. That's cool.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I've had a couple of people say, like all of a sudden new opportunities started coming their way. Stuff that their passions that they like to pursue just started to unfold in new ways. And that's, like in particular, one person who was like, it hasn't changed anything romantically, but then, this happened and that happened. And oh my gosh, I met this person who's helping me with, this thing that's moving my career forward. And I'm like, that's all part of it. Doesn't have to mean you're going to immediately meet like the love of your life.
Right. Exactly. And that's a great point too, is that people think like, oh my gosh, it's cleared. Why isn't like, why aren't I shitting sprinkles and there's, rainbows following me around everywhere? And it's like, it's slow and gradual. And one of my clients said one time, she's like, I thought it was going to be like a big bang, but she's like, it was more like a slow and gentle sunrise. It's like, that is the most perfect, explanation of it. So
I do remember when I can't remember I just looked at my file before we got on here. It might have been the same day that you cleared it to nothing, or maybe it was the day before that you had like completely cleared it. And it was one of my friend's birthdays, and we had gone out to some stupid bar in Scottsdale, which isn't my scene generally anyway. But like the moment I walked in there, I was like, and all my girlfriends were commenting on it. Like guys were just walking up to me left and right. None of them were anything to write home about, but I'm like, what is going on? Like they wouldn't leave me alone. And they were all like, what are you doing today? I'm like, I have no freaking idea. And I remember I texted you, I'm like, because then I like thought about it. And the next day I was like, yes, I was out with my girlfriends last night. And there was like men just like, ugh, everywhere. And you were like, that's the heart wall. I was almost like, ugh, maybe I want it back.
Yeah.
That didn't continue to happen. But like,
right. Yeah. Yeah. It's just that, people, we're always giving off that energy. Yeah. So, okay. So if, somebody wants to know like, okay, how do I clear it? Like, how do I get rid of this? Oh, before that, well, no, I'll dive into that one first. How to clear it, right? Is that one, you can get the emotion code book and learn how to do it yourself. Although I don't recommend it, because we tend to get too connected to our stuff, and sometimes it's hard for us to be unbiased about doing work on ourselves. What are your thoughts on that, Deb?
I would agree on the heart wall piece. I would think it's much better. And especially if you don't have a lot of experience with this. I, at this point, because I'm, just learned how to do the emotion code, actually just got my certificate.
Yay.
I sometimes will do stuff on myself for little things like, if I have a little ache or pain, I'm like, yeah, let me just see if I can like figure out what that might be. And sometimes to practice using the tools, I might look for my own blockages, but I don't know that I would try to do my own heart wall.
Yeah.
I do feel like you might, I think it would be better to have kind of an impartial person doing that for you.
Yeah. And so, we're here. We both, can help you with that. I am definitely more one to work with somebody else, and especially somebody who can help you with the conscious level tools as well, because which both of us can, because if we're just giving you releasing the emotions but not giving you the tools that you need to learn how to deal with emotions when they come up,
Mhm.
then that's how you can rebuild a heart wall. Like,
Exactly.
is that it's like, oh, they got rid of, I got rid of my heart wall, but I don't have the emotional tools to deal with when somebody pisses you off, when you're in danger and how to process those emotions. Then it's like, okay, I build up that heart wall again. I got to go back and have somebody release it. And then something else happens. Right. So
Yeah.
we have to have
I
those
think
conscious level tools. So good.
absolutely. And awareness of where it came from in the first place, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
will say I think you feel similarly, but because sometimes when we're finding them, I don't know if so much in the heart wall, but sometimes I do get like, the responses that tell me to ask for like when that emotion was trapped. And I know sometimes people will then try to figure out, well, what happened to me at age 25? If they don't immediately think of something, I'm usually like, if you know exactly what that's related to, great. If you don't sit there and try to dig for it. And, kind of, especially for me personally, when things are found from my childhood and I'm like, I don't know what that could be. I don't want to I'm not going to go trying to find out because we've released it. I don't
Correct.
need to know necessarily, but I do think sometimes if it's the same emotion that keeps coming up or the same age keeps coming up, there it might be worth trying to figure out what was that and how do you prevent rebuilding that from a similar situation.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you want to find out if you could possibly have one, I'm linking my website. Oh, wait, I'm going to do another one. You go to heathere.com. On the main page, there is a thing that says, do you have a heart wall? So you go to heathere.com or energy healing with Heather /heart wall. And there's a quiz that you can take to find out if you have a heart wall. And if you do, then you can reach out to either one of us. Deb's email is deborah.karen@gmail.com. You see it there on the screen. And then my email is Heather Espo, ESPO, @gmail.com. And either one of us would love to help you with that. We have some assessments to do before and after so that we see like the measure where things are, because a lot of times once people's heart walls are released, they're like, yeah, not much different. And then we start talking and they're like, it's like, this is different, this is different, and this is different.
Mhm.
But it's because we've gotten you closer back to your natural true source, which is love, that you forget the suffering that you were in. So that's why doing the assessment before and after is really, really helpful, but also then to see where else, we can explore and what else like needs to be shifted. And like a great example of this is I was talking to a woman the other day, and some of her numbers they didn't seem aligned with the shifts that she had. And she was like, because I'm in between this, like letting go of this old person and stepping into this new identity. And so like just trying to like feel my emotions and all this like from this new person is just a different experience for me. And
Interesting.
so it was very fascinating because the numbers can be great, but you have to know the stories behind the numbers too. So
Yeah.
that's why I think it's helpful to do that. So reach out to us if you would like to work on your heart wall. As I mentioned, you know, people are always like, I feel so much lighter. I feel so much free. I feel so much more different. And I'm going to read this one testimony that a client said, she's like, it's like a miracle. She's like, I've done a lot of work over the years on myself, and I've always been so hard on myself. Even the past few years when I was working on being less hard, she's like, I was still being really hard on myself. And she's like, suddenly I feel like my own ally, my best friend. And she's like, I realize it's because of releasing my heart wall. She's like, it's like a miracle. And it is. I don't understand it. It sounds so wackadoo every time I explain it.
Mhm.
I worked on somebody last week. We had our follow-up call and she's like, these are tectonic shifts. Like these are monstrous. I'm like, yeah, they really are. So it's cool stuff.
Yeah.
And Deb is now officially an
Yay.
motion code practitioner, so
Yep.
she can do
Yep.
that.
I've
And
got my
we're
little
going to work
certificate.
on, yep, I'm working on the body code so you can do that more. So reach out to either one of us. We'd love to help you with that. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments below. Anything you have to wrap up?
No, I think we've covered it pretty well. Um, Yeah, I think it's exciting. I just encourage people to at least consider the idea, and you'll feel it if it's something that you think you need to do.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Till next time, we will see everyone later. Have a good
All
one.
right. Bye.